Some bills don't empty your wallet, they hollow out your heart. Every time I think of the first check my father handed my mother, I remember her smile, not soft, not warm, but paper thin and trembling at the edges. Since that day, I've never looked at money the same way again. My name is Emily. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind with wooden houses lined up like old friends sharing a long-held secret. My mom was an elementary school teacher. My dad used to be an accountant. But somewhere along the way, he shifted into business ventures, a string of projects I could never quite keep track of. To outsiders, we looked like any stable American family, a front yard, family dinners, and a wedding photo hanging in the living room. But inside those walls, only we knew the truth. Sometimes, the thing holding a home together is not love, but a quiet chain of lies we call sacrifice. I was 16 the first time I saw Mom holding that check from Dad. It was a rainy summer, and she'd been anxious for days because my French tutoring fees had gone up. Dad came home late, smelling of coffee and cigarettes. His shirt wrinkled, but smiling like he'd just won the lottery. He pulled a check from his wallet, placed it on the kitchen table, and said softly, "Don't worry, I've got it covered." Mom didn't speak. She stared at the check for a long time. She didn't thank him. She didn't kiss him like moms do in the movies. She just smiled, a fragile, water-soaked kind of smile. Then she folded the check, slipped it into her pocket, and turned toward the sink. The sound of running water filled the silence like rain on an empty roof. Back then, I didn't understand. I only saw that she stopped worrying. I thought that was love. But real love doesn't taste like resignation. And it never comes with quiet debt hidden beneath quiet smiles. When I got to college, I started learning things childhood never taught me. Money isn't just spare change in a ceramic jar on top of the fridge. It can light up dreams, or slowly flood the house and drown everything you love. Mom tried to give me everything. Money for textbooks, rent for the dorm, breakfast groceries. I offered to work part-time, but she said no. Just study, honey, let me take care of it. But I could see her shrinking. The dark circles under her eyes. The hollowness in her cheeks. I noticed things disappearing from the house. Grandpa's old clock. Mom's porcelain teapot set from her wedding. Even the faded white dress tucked in her closet. Dad was different. Calls were rare, questions rarer. When he visited, he talked about exciting new ventures and fast investment returns. He told me to start thinking big and drop that broke people mindset. Once, when Mom asked him for help with my next semester's tuition, he snapped, "What, you think I print money? Why is it always me?" I was standing right there. That sentence didn't just silence Mom, it slashed through whatever fragile thread of warmth still existed between them. Mom turned away, eyes red. I stood frozen, barely breathing, afraid the air itself might shatter what was left. Like that ceramic jar I once dropped, the one that never quite held coins the same again. Even after we glued it back together. Sometimes I wonder, if Mom hadn't taken that check that day, would things have turned out differently? But life doesn't deal in what ifs. Only what is. And I had yet to learn. The real cost of that love check would be higher than anything Mom ever paid. When I started my sophomore year, Pennsylvania turned colder than usual. The wind snuck in through my dorm window and reminded me of our old house, of Mom quietly cleaning up dinner plates alone every night. And slowly, I began to realize something. Every financial promise from my dad was like a dead leaf, it rustled, but never held warmth. I never asked Mom directly, but I knew she was scraping by. Sometimes, during video calls, I'd notice little gaps behind her. The painting that once hung over the couch was gone. The bookshelf looked thinner. She'd say, "Just cleaning up." But I knew. She was selling them on eBay, trading memories for grocery money, electric bills, and expenses I would never see. One Monday morning, I was called to the student finance office. Ms. Megan, the woman in charge, handed me a letter with a red stamp on top. Final notice. Your tuition payment for this semester is still outstanding. If not paid within 14 days, your enrollment will be suspended. I stood there, frozen, my eyes locked on the words while my ears heard nothing but a slicing sound, like scissors cutting paper. Cold, sharp, Final. Ms. Megan gave me a look that was soft, but tired. She'd seen this before, too many times. I called Mom immediately. She picked up right away. Her breathing shallow. Mom, the school just told me my tuition hasn't been paid. Is this a mistake? Silence. Then a deep, deep sigh. And then, she cried. Not the kind of cry that breaks out loud, but the kind that breaks inward, the kind that gets stuck in your throat because your heart is crumbling from the inside. I'm sorry, I thought I'd have it covered. That one sentence hit me like winter wind slamming into bare skin. She had tried. Alone. And I had no idea. I'd been upset that she wouldn't let me get a job. I thought she was being overly controlling. But the truth was, she was protecting me while unraveling in silence. That night, I searched for part-time jobs near campus. Waitressing, tutoring, even handing out flyers in the cold. But inside, I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at my dad. I called him. It was a short call. Jazz music hummed in the background when he picked up. Ah, Emily, how are you, sweetie? Things have been crazy busy lately. You promised to pay my tuition. The school's threatening to suspend me. He went quiet for a few seconds. Then said gently, yeah, I've got this big project going on. The money's coming. I just need a little more time. I cut him off. You know what, Dad? Mom's selling everything in the house just to keep us afloat. And you're throwing money into something I've never even seen. You chose money. She chose me. I didn't wait for a response. I hung up. The next week, I went home. It was the first time I saw my mother look truly spent. Her eyes had sunk into dark hollows. Her hands thinner, wrinkled, like paper folded too many times. But the hardest part? Seeing her sitting at the kitchen table, folding a stack of papers, letters from the bank. She didn't say a word. Just placed one envelope on the table and slid it toward me. Final warning. The education loan under the name Mary R. Weller has reached its last term. Failure to pay $18,900 within 30 days will result in foreclosure of the property. I looked at her, my voice breaking. When did you take this loan? She smiled, but not the kind of smile that shows sadness or defiance. It was the smile of someone completely exhausted. Since your first year of college. I didn't want you to go without. I thought, if I could just make it work a little longer. I gripped her hand. It was cold, brittle, like porcelain left out in the wind too long. And in that moment, all the memories came rushing back. The checks she tucked away. The cheap dinners. The missing keepsakes. All traded, so I could sit here and cry. That night, I slept on our old sofa. My back ached. My eyes stared at the ceiling I'd grown up under. And in the silence, one truth echoed through me. Money isn't just paid in blood. Sometimes, it's paid in the quiet sacrifice of a mother who loves her child more than herself. I woke up in the middle of the night, shaken from a strange dream. My mother was standing in the rain, holding a cracked mirror in her hands. She stared into it, gave a sad little smile, and whispered something I couldn't hear. When I opened my eyes, my heart was pounding. Moonlight streamed through the window, falling on the water stains on the ceiling, as if time itself was sighing. I walked quietly into the kitchen. Mom was still awake. The yellow light cast a soft glow on her shoulders as she sat at the table, surrounded by old documents. As I got closer, I noticed a familiar envelope, the kind used to mail checks. She looked up at me, unsurprised. It was like she'd known I'd come down. I wasn't planning to show you this, she said, but maybe it's time. She slid the envelope across the table. I opened it. It was that check, the very first one Dad gave her. I remembered it vividly, thinking it was some symbol of love. But there was something I'd never noticed before, in the top right corner. Printed in small, faded text. Cash advance, credit line, Capital One, interest 19.9% APR. It hit me like ice water to the face. Wait, this was a? Mom nodded, eyes distant. It wasn't your father's money. It was a credit card advance. He was already in debt when you were in middle school. But he never said a word. He just kept writing checks and chasing investments. And me? I was left holding the consequences. I blurted out, so all these years, you've been paying it back? She smiled. And then, Tears rolled down her cheek. Not for him. For you. I went silent. In my mind, images came flooding back. Her hunched over bills. Lights turned off early to save electricity. Little treasures disappearing from the house. One by one. All of it, to preserve a fragile sense of normalcy for me. For a daughter who never realized that behind every quiet breakfast, a storm of debt was brewing. A week later, the bank sent their final notice. If the full amount wasn't paid, the house would be taken. I came home and saw Mom standing in the living room, staring at the empty wall where their wedding photo used to hang. She didn't say anything. Then, slowly, she sank to the floor. I rushed to her, trying to help her up. But she shook her head. You don't need to see this, sweetheart. But there's nothing left to sell. I held her hand tightly. For the first time in my life, the woman who once taught me how to spell hope was now crumbling under a foreclosure notice, not proud, not composed, just a mother, raw in her helplessness. That night, I submitted a request to take a leave of absence from school. I took 3 jobs. Flyer distribution in the morning, barista in the afternoon, delivery app runner at night. Mom didn't protest, but in her eyes, I saw something like ash, part pain, part gratitude, part regret. One evening, as I was about to leave for my last delivery shift, Dad showed up. He walked in like a stranger, holding a paper bag with wine, wearing a forced smile. I heard there were some money troubles, thought I'd help. Mom said nothing. I stared at him like he was a blank wall. You're late, I said. Too late. He frowned. You don't understand? I've been trying. I tossed the old check at him. Oh, I understand. You handed Mom a pile of debt and called it love. You lived in delusion. She lived in pain. He didn't argue. He just looked down at the check. Then murmured, I'm sorry. Mom cut in, her voice calm but firm. No, you don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself the truth. And you owe your daughter a father who takes responsibility. That day, Dad left. No wine, no goodbye, just the echo of his footsteps down the hall. And the softest sigh from Mom. Like the closing chapter of a life lived beside someone who was never fully there. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started typing the first lines of my debut short story. A mother, a check, and a house wrapped in debt. And I made myself a quiet promise. I will never let money destroy anyone else I love. 3 months after my father left, the house grew quieter, no more arguments. But strangely empty. The walls, once holding family memories, now stood bare. Mom cleaned every corner like she was scrubbing the past away. Between long, draining work shifts, I held on to one ritual. Each night, I'd sit beside her, and we'd share a cup of hot tea. We didn't talk about the past. We lived simply, no Netflix, no eating out, no impulse buys. But in that minimalism, something new began to grow, peace. One early spring night, a breeze drifted through the open window. I saw Mom sitting at the table, holding a piece of paper in her hands. I applied to teach again, she said, eyes lit with a spark I thought I'd never see again. At your old school? She nodded. They remembered me, said they still needed someone patient enough for underprivileged kids. I hugged her tightly, and in that moment, she was no longer the woman hunched over bills, weighed down by debt. She was someone reborn, rising from the ashes of silent sacrifice. I returned to college in the fall. The air was crisp, but my heart felt warmer than ever. I kept studying writing, but this time, I had something new, experience. No more stories about distant galaxies or made-up lands. Now, my words were soaked in truth, real enough to carry the weight of the pain Mom and I had lived through. I submitted a short story to the campus magazine. Title: The Check No One Signed. They published it, and for the first time, I received money for something I wrote. I didn't spend it. I brought it home and placed it in my mother's hands. This isn't support money. It's the seed you planted. She said nothing, just took the bills, pulled out a $20 note, and slipped it into a small ceramic jar, the same one that once held my childhood nickels and dimes. We'll call it savings, for a new dream. One quiet Sunday morning, Mom baked banana bread. The smell filled the house, sweet, nostalgic. I brought her a latte from the cafe I used to work at. No sugar, just the way she liked it. We had breakfast together, no phones, no rush, just warm bread, coffee, and soft glances between two women who had weathered the storm. I asked her softly, "Do you still think money is what breaks everything?" She looked out the window, where morning light poured through the fresh green leaves. "I think money is just a test. If the love is real, you'll survive it. If not, it just exposes the cracks sooner." Years later, I now teach creative writing at a small college. When my students ask, "What makes a story powerful?" I always say, start with a painful truth, and end with a gentle one. Because that's how I've lived. There are mothers who never say, "I love you," out loud. They say it through paid bills, humble meals with just enough nutrients, and hands worn thin from packing dreams into every coin they can find. And there are fathers who only realize, too late, that money can't fix what's broken. If it was never used to build, only to impress.